Welcome to the Fantasyfling DFS channel. Take a break from the season-long commitment and join us for all things daily fantasy sports. DraftKings Daily Drafts, the newest and hottest DFS deals, and all the best ball and DFS content you can handle. All right, let's dive headfirst into this episode.
What is up? Welcome, Jameson. It's Fantasyfling and Jameson Thursday Night Football Showdown, NFL DFS Week 13 content. So we are getting into the Seattle Seahawks and Dallas Cowboys showdown. Jameson, how we doing?
Doing pretty good. Both of us had a pretty good Sunday. Thanksgiving was a little iffy, but we made up for it in GPP land Sunday. But I'm excited for obviously Thursday Night Football. We got the Seahawks and the Cowboys. It seems pretty straightforward, but I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, man. Had a sweat on Sunday. Almost took down my first large field GPP of the season. Finished 5th, 6th place, whatever it was, but was out of like 23,000 and just one player off. That's what it's been twice this year. Almost had the nuts on a showdown, but was one player off. So, I feel like how these things happen is you get close once, twice, a few times, and then you hit, so that's kind of where we're at.
Right. I had a similar thing over on FanDuel, the $10 scramble. I ended up getting 13th place, but I had the Josh Allen stack with Gabe Davis. And if he would have caught that touchdown where he didn't turn his head the right way, things would be a little different. So I won a little bit of money, but obviously had Kyron Williams with that. He was my flag playing on the DFS show on Sunday. So I felt made me look pretty smart, but I just thought that was good play. Obviously, Allen was in a good spot with a lot of people playing Jalen Hurts. And it just kind of got there. Like I said, I wish Gabe Davis would have caught that touchdown. Would change the outcome a little bit, but it's obviously still a pretty good Sunday.
Yeah, man. I mean, it can kind of be frustrating because you're just like, if I just played, I did double tight end. If I'd played Gabe Davis over Kincaid, I would have won second place, would have been, $6,000, just that one swap. And, a single entry, because normally I try to build several variations off the same lineup, in tournaments, but for single entry, obviously you can't do that. You get one bullet in it. So nonetheless, making a profit is always a good day. So you never go broke making a profit.
And we plan on doing that again, hopefully with the Cowboys and the Seahawks. And I know we're going to get into it, but I think for a lot of people, this game is just so straightforward. So kind of make sure that we stay like kind of different off the path so we can knock some stuff down. But I think a lot of people are going to be thinking the same way that you and I are with this game.
Absolutely. I'm not going to be the one to get contrarian with it. I may do, one single entry contrarian build. But as far as the MME strategy for me, I'm going to play it exactly how I think it's going to go. And really, we look at the Vegas lines. They have 47.5 team total, but most of that is Dallas. They are almost 10-point favorites. I have a 28.25 implied team total. With Seattle with a 19-point implied team total. And it's funny because I was looking at Statsational. If you don't know who he is, he's a top sports bettor and DFS pro. He actually runs the Sharp app. And I was looking at some of his projections, and he's got this almost identical to what Vegas has. So, when you see two things match up from very sharp places, Vegas and, the guy that beats Vegas regularly, I like it. So that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to lean the Dallas side.
Right. I do want to go over some just quick notes here.
Yeah.
Cowboys have won 13 straight games at home. Every game they've played at home this season, they've won by at least 20 points. So, I mean, it's just been pretty lopsided. And then as far as injury stuff, it doesn't seem like Kenneth Walker's going to be playing for the Seahawks, but they do give offensive lineman Abe Lucas back. I almost said Abe Lincoln, the president. That's horrible. But which that should help Geno Smith a little bit. The offensive line has been pretty bad. It's just been banged up all season long, so I think that helps a little bit. It doesn't help that they go up against the Dallas defense, but any help is appreciated. So Abe Lucas coming back, I think, bumps up things a little bit. It's just not a really good matchup for Seattle. Geno Smith hasn't been himself like he was last year. The
No.
offense had a couple shootouts to begin the year, but I mean, the past month and a half, I mean, it just seems like dust. And then the defense hasn't been very good either. They're, I think, 22nd overall this year, and it just hasn't really gotten there, even though they've got some pieces in the secondary.
Yeah, I was looking at notes that I made earlier as well, and Gino, I mean, over the past 4 games, he's had 3 touchdowns and 2 picks. We're talking about 4 games. That's less than a touchdown a game. They've just been really bad, and I think what's crazy about it is they have so many weapons. Like they went into the draft and they added more weapons on offense. So like it's regression, and I think in a lot of ways, last year was kind of a great story, but what we're seeing is that a little bit of the Geno that we saw before last year, and he's got a good team around him. So it's just, this hasn't been very good.
No, and I think one thing, the offensive line last year was a little bit healthier, and he was one of the better deep ball throwers in the NFL. He hasn't had the time. Every time he steps back, he gets smoked. And then, that keeps happening over and over again. These guys kind of lose their confidence. They're not really hitting their stride, stuff like that. I think that's kind of taken a part of, what worked for Seattle last year and that not being around this year. Like DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, those guys haven't really been hitting either.
It was almost like him and Russell Wilson just did a complete swap last year, and then they swapped back this year,
Yeah, Russ is like moving around. They said he lost weight. He lost like 20 pounds this past offseason. And I mean, he looks like the Russ of old, and then Geno kind of looks like Russ on what we thought was his last leg. So that's a perfect comparison.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just kind of want to look at just a few numbers here. Seattle, they have been the wide receiver has normally been the captain for Seattle. So, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, those have obviously been the 2 guys that have been the captains for them. They really never have a tight end in the captain spot. Just looking at past data, and it's not really a surprise, right? I mean, they don't have an elite tight end. They throw to, I mean, Jesus, they have the 3-4 tight ends, it seems, that they throw to, Yep. And then, Geno, obviously, Russell Wilson in the past, that's kind of the scenario where they do end up in the captain. But other than that, it's pretty wide margin. It's been the wide receiver for them. As far as Dallas, it's it's pretty spread out, but wide receiver has been the captain the most for Dallas, almost a fourth of the time. And obviously, I think CeeDee Lamb is a big beneficiary of that. It's mainly CeeDee Lamb. But
absolutely,
tight ends get there, running backs get there, defenses get there, quarterback. So, nothing is overwhelming. So, I think on this slate, the way I'm playing it, Jameson, I don't know about you, is I'm going to spread out the captain if I'm playing 150, but it's mainly going to be wide receiver. But I think quarterback, defense, maybe even running back a little bit.
Yeah, I'd lean that way too. And kind of talking about my captains here, I'm going to be honest. I'm probably not going to play very many Seattle, if at all. I don't play 150, but I do play like just a couple tournament lineups. And I probably won't have I don't think there's a Seattle player that will get there unless they get in a shootout. And we've seen Dallas against these bad teams, which I would consider Seattle right now more of a bad team than a good team, and they just annihilate them. And I think Dallas defense is kind of a captain that can get different. We've seen it a couple times this year that they put up the 30 burger on them. A couple pick sixes, things get like really sideways. And I think Geno is capable of that the way we've seen him play the last month and a half. And then the rest of it will just be mixing Dak and then the pass catchers, like you said.
Yeah. Totally. As far as the captain, and it's going to be all Dallas for me. And, really the way I'm going to be playing this slate overall is, we kind of talked about it a little bit before we came on, is I'm going to take hard stands on this slate because I've been, I've been one player off this year from a takedown. It was when I had the Chargers in the captain spot that week. I think it was the Chargers, right? It was the Chargers.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
So I had the Charger captain, and I just had one of the flex was just one off. It was, nailed every other spot. So kind of tilting a bit with these showdowns. And I'm just, when the numbers point to it, I'm just going to take a hard stand and I'm going to do 4-2, 5-1. And, it's going to be all Dallas and the captain for me.
Yep,
So
absolutely. I do
why
want
don't
to
we
say,
start out with the guys that you kind of like the most, I guess, a captain.
I think for me, it's going to be obviously Dak Prescott,
Yeah.
CD Lamb, and then I'm going to mix a little bit of Brandon Cooks in there too. Brandon Cooks over the last couple of weeks has really hit. We've seen him have the 100-yard game and a touchdown. Obviously, probably not going to compare to CD Lamb, who's been moving all over the field. I know last year with Kellen Moore, but was more in the slot. But I mean, this year they're moving him outside to the perimeter. I mean, they're really trying to work this for him. And then, like I said, Cowboys defense to get just a little bit different because I don't think you and I are going to be the only people who are playing, the Cowboys side pretty heavy. But I think 5-1 will be my preferred way to play this slate, and then 4-2. Just to get a little bit different, but I think that's about it. And then Tony Pollard, if he falls in the end zone twice, I'll have a little bit of him a captain. But it's just going to be Dak, CD, Pollard, Cowboys defense, and Brandon Cooks for me.
Yeah. And, when I feel like specifically when you're going kind of all in on, the way you see the game playing out, being one-sided really, I think that's when I'm more willing to, kind of spread out my captain exposures. Because I'm not going to have Seattle in the captain. So, I'm going to take some shots on Pollard. I'm going to take some shots on Lamb because you do see the scenario where Lamb has a smash game, but, he gets tackled at the 3-4 yard line and then Pollard comes in and gets a touchdown.
Right.
And, Pollard, to your point, he did have 17, 18 opportunities the past couple games. So it's not like he's not being used. I feel like, remember last year, Joe Mixon, we were just getting so frustrated with Joe Mixon. And then he just had that one game where he just went off for like 40, 50 points. It was just stupid. I think he had like 5 total touchdowns.
And it kind of compares like last year. Amon-Ra St. Brown would get tackled at the 1 constantly.
Yeah.
And then it was Jamal Williams who would get it in. So you think like, say, for instance, CD Lamb, has 90 to 100 yards and Tony Pollard ends up with 2 touchdowns because of it. Just kind of thinking that way, just kind of get a little bit different. I don't think Tony Pollard's the best play as far as, captain spots, but we can see him get there. Let's say he's got 50, 60 yards. Or if he catches one out of the backfield and runs it for a touchdown and then gets another touchdown on the 1 yard line, just kind of stuff like that.
Yeah, most definitely. And, these games where we have a team that's heavily favored, that is really the optimal time that you want to play the running back. You see these big spreads, you got a home team, home favorite, checking a lot of boxes right there to play Pollard. And, maybe play some Dowdle too. He got into the end zone. He's gotten a lot of points off of hardly any volume. I noticed that. I was looking at his stats earlier. He get like 4 or 5 touches and end up with 15 points. It's nuts.
Yeah, and they used him, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago in the red zone a little bit. He caught like a screen pass and ran it in for a touchdown when a lot of people were wanting that to be Tony Pollard. He's gotten a little bit of work, and we've seen on these short weeks that these backups get a little bit more work just so they're not running their, RB1 into the ground. So I was going to bring him up as my flex. I don't think he's a dart throw. I think he's a flex option for this week.
For sure. I agree. So yeah, I'll kind of go through my captains here. For me, CD Lamb is going to be far and away my top captain play. And, I don't have ownership projections just yet over at DFS Army. But, I'm expecting these to be tomorrow. And, I expect CD Lamb to be the highest owned guy in the captain. I expect the field to be all over him. But whatever it is, I'm going to be more on CD Lamb. So I love him in the captain. And, if I'm playing 20 max, I definitely will be locking him in. If I'm doing the mini max, 150, I certainly will be over the field in that as well. But yeah, he's a top play for me. He's just been on an incredible run, tear, whatever you want to call it. Got 46 targets over the past 4 games. He's got over 1,000 receiving yards on the season. He's just been unreal. And Seattle, they're not very good against the pass. They've been quite poor. So Dallas, they're projected for almost 300 passing yards. I just love CD Lamb in this spot. because no one in that offense is getting near the looks that he is in the receiving game.
No, I definitely agree. And we've seen even in these like lopsided games that Dallas will still throw. I mean, Dak Prescott is playing at an MVP level right now. Against these worst teams, we've kind of seen him not show up as much. I mean, he played pretty good against the 49ers, even though they lost. But I mean, Dak's playing well. Like I said, if I'm going to get a little different at captain, I'll play Brandon Cook side while a lot of people are playing CeeDee Lamb, just in case that kind of flip flops for a game. But I'm with you, and
Yeah.
I think that's really about it for captains, unless you have anything else.
Yeah, I will, like I said, I will have kind of spread it out with Dallas. I'm going to have a little bit of Dak, and if I got Dak at captain, I'm really making sure I have at least two pass catchers with him, because that means to me that, he's spreading the ball out. He's, it's going to CeeDee Lamb, it's going to Cooks, it's going to Ferguson, Gallup, whoever it may be, maybe even a screen to Pollard. So, or Dowdle, because apparently he catches those too. So yeah, it's Dak. It's Pollard is pretty even with Dak. So it's really Lamb, it's Pollard. It's going to be Dak for me with the three captains, and then I will have a little bit of Dallas D in the captain as well. Not a lot, maybe 5%, something like that. So
Yeah, I wouldn't be too heavy. I think the main thing, if you're thinking that way, is trying to figure out which Seattle player you're going to be kind of mixing and matching like player or two with, because I don't think there's a whole lot. I brought up Ken Walker probably being out, so I think I'll have a lot of Charbonnet.
yeah,
And then if you hope that they kind of get in the red zone, Jason Myers, I mean, he kicks a couple field goals, gets you 9 points.
yeah.
That's kind of ideal. But I'm going to be honest, I'm probably not going to play much Geno. He has been terrible as far as the fantasy quarterback the last month and a half. He's just not been getting there. And I'm not very comfortable with it. And then obviously Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and then JSN. I think JSN's kind of more of a dart throw, but that's kind of the flex I have for Seattle, because you obviously have to have at least one to run it back with.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that. And in the flex for me on the Seattle side, the guy that I like the most as well would be Charbonnet, just because they're going to be trailing. I'd expect there's several reasons why. First, I think they're going to be trailing, and he is a good receiving back. He's going to get 5-6 targets a game. We're not expected to see Kenneth Walker, so just dump offs. I think he can get there. And, secondly, I think the one scenario where Seattle does do well in this game, it's probably going to be running the ball with Charbonnet. So I think he's going to be a guy that I will have in the flex. I'll be way over the field in the flex.
I agree there. And I do think that Dallas can be run on. The problem is a lot of these teams just get so out of game script that they can't commit to the run, to where they get so far behind that they got to start passing. But if they can kind of hang in there, I do think that Charbonnet does have a little bit of juice. And like I said, he'd be the one I'd pick on the Seattle side as well.
Most definitely, man. So yeah, let's kind of just go through some of the other flexes that we like. Who are you thinking of?
The only I listed all the Seattle ones. The only other flexes I had for Dallas would be Aubrey the kicker, who's been really good this year. Jake Ferguson, who has actually been really good in the red zone. Last couple weeks he hasn't gotten there, but I mean there was a little bit of a stretch where he was like the guy in the end zone. And then Rico Dowdle for me would be the other person as far as the Dallas side goes. And then I think the rest of the people I was going to bring up on the Dallas side would be dart throws.
Absolutely. So a couple guys on the Dallas side, obviously, if Dak is not in the captain spot, he's going to be a lock for me in the flex. So, I'm probably going to have about 100% of Dak in this game, for being honest. And the same can be said for CeeDee Lamb. I do think I'm going to have a lot of Tony Pollard. Like I said, this is just this sets up as a really good spot for running backs. Whenever a team is at home and heavily favored, they have a high implied team total. You really want to play the backs in those games. Even though Seattle has a pretty neutral defensive, rush defense, I still think Pollard could get there just based on volume, just based on them moving the ball and falling in the end zone, and just being, heavy favorites and probably going to be playing with the lead. But, that said, Dak continues to throw in those spots. So I'm trying to definitely mix my wide receiver exposures in this game. I want a little bit of Gallup. I want a little bit of Cooks, and I definitely want to get a little bit of Ferguson. Now, obviously, Cooks is a guy that will spike every now and then. He's actually had about 6 targets a game the last 3 games. So, he's definitely the guy that I favor in that passing offense outside of Lamb. And then, of course, Ferguson, talented tight end. And he certainly has had some spike games. So that's more or less it for me on the Dallas side. Like I said, we talked about a little bit of Rico Dowdle sprinkled in as a flex, but, I'm not expecting to be over the field there.
No, you're if you're playing him in the flex, you're kind of hoping for a touchdown there.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I guess this kind of would be the scenario where maybe you play 2 running backs, just all out onslaught kind of stack. But yeah, that would be kind of a 5-to-1 stack for me. If I'm playing 2 running backs, I definitely wouldn't do in 4-2.
Right. And then I think for the dart throws, if you're going to keep mixing and matching the Dak Prescott pass catchers, I put Gallup in this kind of category just because I haven't seen much of a ceiling from him. And with Brandon Cooks kind of coming on as of late, I think that kind of pushes Gallup down a little bit. And then Turpin and Tolbert, both of them could catch a touchdown. We've kind of seen it, but as far as, like I said, they're dart throws and just kind of hoping you hit on the touchdown upside. And then the backup tight end, Schoonmaker, I think 2 weeks ago, he caught a touchdown instead of Jake Ferguson. That would be the Dallas dart throws for me. They're all the pass catchers trying to kind of mix and match.
Yeah, you have to get these tight ends who are minimum priced or close to minimum price, because they will crush your lineup. You have to get exposure to these guys. So if you have a Ferguson lineup, well, you see Schoonmaker or Hendershot catch a touchdown, well, it's probably dead. So, and in Seattle, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tight ends. Oh, I mean, it's just ridiculous the amount of tight ends they have. And 3 of them are live to catch a touchdown at any point, really. So play these tight ends. But a couple other guys I wanted to highlight on the Seattle side. Really, for me, it's just Metcalf and Lockett. I want to go after volume. Metcalf's been getting about 10 targets the past several games. Lockett about 7. JSN is the guy that I'm just not really playing unless, Lockett or Metcalf are out of the game. But, he's a guy that could certainly get a few targets. He could take 1 to the house. But, it's kind of a large field GPP, small exposure type play. But on a showdown slate, obviously everyone's playable. So, yeah, I would mix in a little bit of JSN, but it would be more so on the Metcalf and Lockett for my bring back in my Dallas builds, my 4-2s, my 5-1s with Dallas. And then obviously Jake Bobo, he has caught a couple touchdowns every now and then. So he's a guy that I think projects pretty well as a fantasy points per dollar play.
I agree there. I've got him on my dart throw list. And then the other guys for Seattle would be DJ Dallas. He'd be the guy directly behind Charbonnet. And then the plethora of Seattle tight ends, which would be Noah Fant, Will Dissly, those guys as well. And I think unless I'm missing one, I think that's about it. I don't think I'm going to play Deuce Vaughn, the backup running back in Dallas. And I really don't think there's too much else here for me. Parkinson maybe, and that's about it.
Yeah, one of the guys that's popping over for fantasy points per dollar is D. Eskridge.
That's the one I was forgetting.
Yeah. So he's got a 6.5 projection right now for fantasy points per dollar over at DFS Army's Domination Station, because he's only $200 in his 1.3 projection. So hey, yeah, if he catches a couple balls at 200, he could certainly get there. And yeah, that's the guy that's really standing out. And by the way, if you want access to these tools, which ownership projections will be updated tomorrow, and you can, build your lineups and look for spots of leverage and, force these 4-2 stacks and 5-1 stacks. That's over at dfsarmy.com. And you can use code Fantasyfling for 10% off a VIP subscription. But Jameson, what else? Is that pretty much it for you for the dart plays?
I think so. I don't think there's anything else. I think the last thing I was going to ask is just if there's one way to get different on where it seems like both of us are pretty straightforward, where would you try to get different?
I think kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier. I think I would, if I was looking to get different, I would lean on Seattle having a ground and pound approach, trying to minimize the game, keep Dallas off the field, and, really running the ball through Charbonnet. Gino has been pretty poor as of late. I think the last thing they want to do is try to get in a shootout with, Gino versus Dak. I think they want to slow the game down, kind of the formula the Broncos have been using this year, really, and just probably tilt the rock. So if I want to get different, I would lean Charbonnet as like my captain and play it that way.
I think that's a pretty sharp way to do it. I think for me, would be playing either Cowboys defense or Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks, it gets you a little bit of leverage off Dak, just in case he fails or gets injured or something, which I'm not advocating he gets injured, but we know what kind of happens. And then Dallas defense, let's say they go 10-15% in the captain spot and they kind of go off and do their thing where they have the just massive game. I think it kind of gets hard to get, kind of catch up that way.
Definitely. Yeah. I like also, we always have to keep in mind kickers and defenses. Clearly like the Dallas D, and we'll be playing a lot of them. But I think, specifically on the Seattle side, Jason Myers is a guy that I'd like to get some exposure to. Dallas, we know they can score at will. I could see Seattle being able to move the ball a little bit, but settling for field goals. So I would like a little bit of Jason Myers in my mix as well. So
I think that's about it. I think we've about covered it.
That's going to wrap it up. Appreciate you joining me. Of course, we will be back next Wednesday to, preview another showdown. I will be doing the underdog and drafters reviews for the daily drafts, the weekly winners, all that, and a little bit of strategy tomorrow on that. So also almost took down the Sunday whale over with drafters. So that was pretty fun. Took third place in that. Was pretty dang close. So, hopefully you get a takedown on one of those too.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
absolutely.
That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah. As long as we're making money, that's all that matters. But yeah, we'll get those takedowns too. But well, best of luck, Jameson. And, best of luck, everyone. We'll see y'all next week.
Guys, take care. Have a good one.
Later.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to smash that like button and subscribe. You don't want to miss what's coming next. We really appreciate it. And we'll catch you in the next episode right here on the Fantasy Fling DFS channel.